from these two different horses sets. Sure, they all have like two horns, right? One white, one black. What are the differences? You guys are expert on this, right? Because you do experiment, right? Yeah. Noise, humidity, temperature, and what are the what are the major differences there? Opposite, yeah, good observation. Yeah. What else? The material you use, the color composition, the way that you apply the stroke, right? So in the Western paintings, right, it's more in the very detailed manner, right? Rather than having a big stroke. If you're thinking of a pistol status, like it will get into that detail, right? Each stroke has to be exactly a reflection of the lighting. Precision, right? A lot of precision there. Also, the color is more, I would say, more colorful because it has a lot of the background in, like the green, white, the hue of yellow, right? But here it's more like black and white as a major theme. The other differences that I can see is a lot of this Asian, Chinese painting is more of an impressionism, right? In terms of, just getting the feeling of that, and the stroke is so wild. It wasn't just to that exact manner, and maybe the paintbrush is like so thick, it's just, it's just a, you feel it, right? You can feel it, but it wasn't just like a photo, like picture, right? They call it photo. What is this? This is one of the unique art that are related to the Chinese character, which is called calligraphy. Can you see which characters is that? Which character? Horse, right? Obviously, it's a horse, right? So this is also the charm of the hieroglyphic driven type of a language, right? Like you will see these characters in that manner. So we kind of talk about how to write and read some of the Chinese characters. I want to talk about how we speak in a different way and why these differences are. Before I hit there, I want to still kind of going back to this 2,000 years ago when the first dynasty, Ming Dynasty, the first emperor just unified or standardized the Chinese character. This move has made a country with more than 6 dialects, which people use a different grammar system, able to evenly speak different way with accent, different tunes that I barely could understand. When you write in Chinese on the paper, you can understand everything, right? This is very just like the opposite story of our Tower of Babel, right? Thinking that way. So in terms of speaking, there are very quite a few different meaning characters. For instance, Chinese tend to speak with a short pauses between the syllables in Chinese. Why? Because it always starts with a consonant and end with one syllable. That's why American would speak like, you're welcome, right? You're welcome. Like you don't keep your mouth closed, but Chinese likely, and if you're going to, visit Japan, you will see they say computer, right? This is actually part of the language, right? Like everything is in that kind of past manner, or you are welcome, right? This is the language speaking from their mother tongue, and they carry that trait into learning a new language. What does that make a difference? Have you ever always noticed, the Asian kids are so smart, 3 years old, start remembering all the timetable. And maybe, 5 years old, they would remember the periodic table. Why is that? I'm going to show you in the coming 10 seconds, we're going to cover 80% of these elements, right? So I covered a lot of them, right? And a lot of our Chinese knows this. Why you guys don't? Why? Can you remember these? Because we say oxygen, right? In US we say oxygen, but for us it's yang, just one. Helium, right? Helium. And we say qi, right? This is a way that you imply like why we can remember the things that seems to be so tedious in a very easy manner, right? Just like, you remember it. It's almost like a song. It's just da 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 da, going around, right? What else? We talk about my daughter, his name, right? You see a lot of this around, I see a lot of Asian faces, so unless, someone, have that coming out of you. But why? Because in our language, all the he, she, it, him, her, pronounced as ta, right? It's all pronounced as a ta. You know, puppy school, we say ta, right? Your in-laws, ta. That's all the same, right? You don't know, so you have to listen to the context of the conversation in order to determine. You know, you're talking about a female or male, or maybe an object. We're also speaking of my first name always coming, first. I'm introduced, okay, my name is Gina Guo, but if in Chinese I would say, my name is Guo, the family name coming first, and Nana, right? Why it make a little bit difference? Because you needed to be aware, if the person that you work with in China haven't had a lot of this exposure, and they introduce themselves, you would say your last name, like, I made a mistake, right? I saw Brad Fink, one of my good friends, at work. And first I saw him as like, hi, Fink. Like, it was like, wow, that's my last name. That's kind of weird, right? There are also some other things, including no plurals or singular forms, and the tunes we're going to cover later, okay? This is a pinyin chart that basically a romanized, like how we pronounce the Chinese character, right? Translate these cubed hieroglyphic characters into a pronunciation that our Americans can speak. So they have, for instance, if I'm going to say ni hao, maybe you guys can follow me, at least learn one word, right? Ni hao. 我是 Gina. Yeah, 你好，我是, right? So how you actually going to form that? So with 21 initial sounds, you see ni, ne, yi, he, ao, sorry, and 我是, right? So you have to find these, initial sounds, follow the 36 finals. You can go on the code Chinese skill to try to, let the actor pronounce that pronunciation for you. But one of the interesting traits that you see is we speak in monotone, right? In English we speak in monotone, but Chinese is speaking in four tones, which your example would be if I'm saying this is pronounced as a J, doesn't pronounce as a J, but it's pronounced as a G, G, the second tone, G, and T. Each pronunciation carries a different group of Chinese characters, so they totally represent different meanings, right? That's why you have to also nail that in order to speak accurate Chinese. One of the interesting hypotheses by this, the behavior economist, which I learned from TED Talk by Keith Chan, he talked about, he done this, experiment on a lot of OECD countries, right? Basically separate people who speaking futured language like English, where we have a past tense and future tense. But in China, we have none of that, right? I want to tell you why Chinese language itself seems to be intimidating from the Chinese character, because it has so many. But in terms of forming the sentence and language itself is pretty straightforward, very straightforward. Why is that? We say, yesterday it rained, now it's raining. In future tense, it will rain. But for Chinese, it's like, it rained yesterday, it rained now, it will rain tomorrow. What is the differences? So to answer my first question, why people from China who speaking the futureless language tend to save more is because you're thinking from the perspective that we don't have a spectrum of time. If I don't say now, I have no money when I am, right? When I will be, but not when I am 64 years old, right? I have no money. Immediately bring this time spectrum to the current status. Rather than Americans are just, like English speakers, right? Always have to consciously cleave the future and the past and the current into the manner that, okay, it's something that happen in the future, and they have to speak and think in that manner so that they can speak a proper English, right? Like, otherwise it wouldn't be even correct. And his study has also shown that by by comparing the group of people who is from a very similar families, right, who has in a similar level of class of their countries or income, and have found the futureless language speakers tend to smoke less because smoking is a negative savings, right? They're likely to use condoms. they also have less possibility to get a B's. So there are a lot of interesting. I really recommend you guys go there. It's only like 10 plus minutes of things, and in a very scientific experiment manner. You can search his name and that title and just watch it. Now I start to feel like you guys are a little bit confident, right? Like, I know Chinese is not that difficult. Now you can make up your sentence, and I mean it, right? Because ultimately, learning the words is simple, but how to construct a very difficult language, like the female-male sense on the table in Spanish, those things are kind of overwhelming, for Chinese speakers. So let's make up some sentence. The correct sentence: he, right? 他 love, not loves, right? We say I. There's no loves or loved or loving. 听 listen. 音乐 music. 他爱听音乐. He likes to listen to jazz music. 他爱听 jazz 音乐. How are we going to say yes and no sentence? Do you know? What we're going to say, like, does he, right, not do he, does he like, does he love to listen? And we change the loves, right, remove that s, right? Listen to the music, but in Chinese, we only have one intonation word, 嘛. 他爱听 jazz 音乐吗？你是 engineer 吗？ Right? 你是 you are you, right? Are you Eric? 你是 Eric 吗？ Right? In a very simple manner. How about, and then we can answer that with a 是 yes and 不是. So how about special question? It's even simpler. You remove the music that you like, that's a jazz, and just add one word, what? So, he loved listen to what music? 他爱听什么音乐? And that's how we actually form up a sentence. You got it in pretty straightforward, right? So one of the things that I always proud to say, there are many of the long civilization, but Chinese civilization is one of the most continuous civilization. And one of the reasons is because of this language, right? Imagine that you can read the history that is written on this bamboo of what happened in thousands of years ago. But one of the reasons also because the reason they can preserve the history so well is because of natural barriers. What can you see? Let's some Chinese get engaged. What are those in geographic natural barriers? Gobi Desert, Tibetan Plateau. What else? Himalayas and Pacific Ocean, right? This is almost caged this entire China. In many history, have a lot of domestic war, but ultimately this culture has been preserved in a very continuous, very well protected manner, which also means less trade, less war, right? What else could be differences from this geographic, traits? What else can you think of? A Pulitzer Prize winner, his name is Jared Diamond, has proposed this idea that the people is born in a unique geographic condition has different personality traits. Generally speaking, right? Nothing stereotyping, but generally speaking, I'm showing an idea. For instance, if you're looking at the Europeans or people from Japan, we call it islander, right? They have to rely on fishing, very limited resources with little land for having a sustainable living, right? So they have to develop this very, adventures, maybe somewhat even aggression, like they have to be explored to finding more resources, rather than people in China for the generation in the past. It's like, oh, I live by the land, I live by the river, right? I'm much more like inter-sustained in that perspective, right? This could be also something that implied, but nothing now, like with the internet explosion, nothing was really stereotyping, but just saying from that perspective, you would see maybe Chinese would have a little bit more conserved manner, right? It's like self-sustaining in that manner. Take a glimpse of history. look at the Xia is when we first have the hieroglyphic. And this is the Qin dynasty, the first emperor unified not only Chinese characters, right, that helping each other to understand, the language, but more unify the, measurements, like, currency and many other things. And that's the first generation, first dynasty of China. Do you know, this is the first emperor also built a Great Wall. Do you know the purpose of a Great Wall? Any idea? It's, prevent, invasion, right? But what is other thing about these towers are, when they don't have iPhone 10 as they can, right? So if they see the invasion begins, how are they going to translate this message, right, in a very quick manner? They would light up the fire tower, and one by one, miles of information will be translated very, very quickly, right? Well, so this is one of the interesting characters of the Great Wall. In Tang Dynasty, I would like to kind of just brush on this because we have seen the impact on the other countries that are adjacent to China as well, which is including, for instance, the tea culture. The Chinese character has taken up to close to 20% of the Japanese, right? Because when we look at a Japanese menu, a lot of Chinese can't understand. Why is that? Because this is called the cultural ripple effect, where you drop a big stone as a most prosperous dynasty in China. Adjacent countries start to see the flourish of these culture in a much later time. Including, you will see a lot of similar architect work in Japan and in Korea. You will see kimono, right? Japanese girls wearing this kimono for her wedding day. This is exact similar style of the town costume at the time, agriculture, and many others in that nature. I want to get into this kind of, more lighted, topics here, and to give you guys a little quiz to see how, in generally speaking, Westerners and Easterners can react to the same message, right? And why the behaviors are there are. So, which two goes together? So you think it's going to be A, monkey and banana, or monkey and panda? Okay. So I heard a lot of A, right? Monkey and banana. Would you agree with that? The monkey and panda? B. Okay. I think I would have resonated with B a little more because I felt like all the SAT, right? GMAT was actually trying to pair it up with the things in that similar nature, right? So a lot of Easterners would tend to group the monkey and banana together. Why? Because of the interaction, right? Because monkey eats banana. They believe the interaction of two separate objects have intangible connections, right? Is, for instance, if you're looking at the persons drinking the tea, the person and the tea are not two separate objects, right? I drink this, I drink soda. But more so is, I have that correlation with that word to connect these two objects together. That's why when we're in, U.S., what are you going to offer? Say, you want to drink more tea? What do you emphasis on? You emphasis on the noun, right? You want more tea, or soda, an apple, right? Rather than Easterners would say, you want to eat more? Go eat more. Eat, right? Go. The American, Chinese, parents would say, come, sit down, go, right? Very focused on the word. And a lot of Harvard linguistics has called this as a Westerner speaking a lot of a noun as non-biased. And the study has shown, I saw this clips on, YouTube, that this, Asian mom would be like playing with her, 2 years old and say, down, go, the truck goes up and down, right? While the, Western mom would say, yellow truck, blue water, green sand, in a very different manner. So Westerners believe the two subjects are separate, and Easterners believe there's an operation between people and objects, right? The word. A floating balloon suddenly accelerated. What's the reason? You guys think about it? What's the reason? Invisible. What's that? A is the loses air, and B is the wind blowing. Wind blowing. Yeah, I heard some wind blowing. So a lot of Easterners more thinking about the behavior as a result of its surrounding. But the Westerner is object's properties control its behavior. Right? You can see a lot of reading in the news. You will see how the government officials reacted to this diplomatic matter in a very dramatic, different way, right? In terms of how they actually result, the behaviors result of the surrounding. That's why, Westerners believe in being, right? The mountain is the way it has been there 2,000 years ago, and now this is a that, right? This is a being. But the Easterners believe this is a rising. The reason the mountain is that because of the rains, time, sands, rushing through, and this is where they are. It's a sequential manner in that sense. If you read the Chinese newspaper or Japanese newspaper, you will see after a crash, or maybe a train crash or something like that, and it will say how many people get injured, which our social media would say that too, right? But how many people get delayed? And where is the hospital being occupied, and what's the other consequences? Rather than here, we will be more focused on stay to the fact, right? Let's just stay to the fact. Because people from East and West see things differently. When you're looking at the object, Easterners tend to believe that the object is either a reflection, as see if they're looking at it like a light, it's a reflection of its surroundings, or it's the density of its surroundings, which we call the qi. It's kind of like energy. Energy between us filled with qi, right? But a Westerner would think about two separate objects as they're individuals, right? This is one object and that is one object. Why it make a huge differences? You see, Easterners discovered the tide, gravity, acoustic, and magnetism in a much earlier time, right? Because with this energy and gravity, things that are not visible could have a tangible, intangible connections. What else? The wholeness. Westerners looking at individual objects, for instance, a lot of oranges, but 1, 2, okay, they're all kind of the individuality, and from that perspective, and differences in singular and plural, because we have to constantly say we are, these are. There are 3 things, 4 things, right? In a very conscious manner. But the Easterners felt like that's a collection of oneness, right? For instance, if you tell your Asian kids, grown up in Asia, right? Like grown up in China, say, go eat a fruit. On the table, there are so many different things, right? Kiwis, bananas, apples. And they go, okay, I'm going to eat a fruit. Because to them, that's a collection of onesies. It's just a group of fruits. But if you ask the same question to our child, right? Because we have our kids grown up here, it'll be, which fruit? You want to eat the 1 banana, 2 apple, like which one you're referring to? Because they're like a separate, separate object, right? In that group. The study has shown when they're presenting the picture with the exact same picture of an elephant in the wild